Hey everyone, in this video I want to show you how I etch drawings on metal, so I'm going to etch some Celtic designs on this old lineman's hammer. So the first thing I did was sand all the surfaces to 400 grit on the belt grinder. I use rubbing alcohol to clean all the surfaces really good, and I make sure to wear gloves too. That way I don't get any fingerprints or debris on any of the surfaces. I want to make sure that the metal is really clean before we put the paint on. I use Krylon Fusion all-in-one paint and primer 5x stronger adhesion. This is the only paint that I've ever used that actually works. Any other paint that I try to use always ends up dissolving. So I let the paint dry overnight, that way I know it's fully cured, and then I'll sand the surfaces with a 320 grit sandpaper. That way the graphite will stick to the surface when we do the transfer. So now I'm going to use my tracing paper, and I'm going to treat each surface like it's its own panel and trace them separately onto the tracing paper. That way I can really dial in where I want the design to go on each panel. Alright, so now that I have each panel traced out on the paper, I'll bring in my image from Google. I just printed out an image from Google Images that I thought would look cool as a design. And then I'll just trace where I want each section to be on each panel. Once I have all the designs traced into each panel, I'll take a strip of the Duralayer and transfer each panel one at a time. I really like the shape of the lighter for burnishing in the image. A Sharpie marker works pretty good too. So here I'm going to use a ruler and mark a 1/16 of an inch from all the edges, and then I'll draw a line all the way around the perimeter on each panel, and that'll give it this cool kind of caged look, which I think will look pretty nice. So here I'm just using an old Phillips bit that I ground to a tip. That way I can scratch away all the paint where I want it to etch. You can use nail polish to correct any mistakes that you've made. You can also use it to protect the edges. So like on a blade, you can put it on your edge to protect it from getting eaten through. And then also here on these corners, that's what I'm using it for. I want to make sure that it doesn't eat through the paint on any of the corners. I'm going to use my 12-volt battery charger for my power source, and then I'll hook the negative up to the probe that I put in the water, and then I'll hook the positive up to the piece that I'm trying to etch. And the probe is just a piece of mild steel. And then this copper wire that I'm using to suspend the hammer into the water is stripped right on the inside where it connects to the hammerhead through the eye. I'm starting with 6 cups of water in this jar. And then I have 2 extra cups of water just to make sure I can fully submerge the hammer. And for my electrolyte, I'm just going to use a 1/4 cup of iodized salt. And I'll make sure to fully dissolve the salt into the water. Now I'm going to secure the probe in the solution. I want to make sure that it doesn't move around in there. I don't want it to accidentally move around and touch the positive. Alright, so now I'm going to suspend the hammer into the solution. And then I'll use the extra water to make sure it's fully submerged. I added about another cup. And then I'll hook the positive up to the piece that we're etching. And now I can turn on the battery charger. And you see it fizzing, you know it's working. My amp gauge is reading about 7.5 amps, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. And So I'm gonna let this etch for about 30 minutes. You might want to check your piece every 10 minutes or so just to make sure you're not over etching. So I'm going to use acetone and then a little brush to brush off all that paint. Alright, so now that we have all the paint cleaned off, I'm going to use Jack's iron, steel, and nickel blackener. And then I'll apply it all up into the background with the Q-tip. I want to make sure I try and get as even of a black for my background as possible. And the Jack's really helps with that. And then I'll use the belt grinder and I'll grind all the surfaces to 1000 grit. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, especially to the end. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll definitely get back to you. And if you do like this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Thank you.